Greetings, fellow Minnesota Ornithologist Union members. It is my honor to be here today. Thank you so much to Bob Dunlap and Richard King and all the other MOU board members that put this on. And I know this is a little bit of a different year for all of us. I wish we could all be together. I'm missing the book sale. I always like to sneak out to that. But we'll be back to doing that again here soon. And so thank you though for putting up with it this way for a while here. I hope this goes well. And in fact, I apologize ahead of time if my presentation doesn't go well. I'm just going to keep right on rolling through it because I don't want to have to redo it again. So we're just going to keep rolling on with mistakes and all. So hang on for a good ride here. But I'm anxious to share with you tonight. I'm the education director at the National Eagle Center. I have been there since late 2006. But today I'd like to share with you my love and my passion, my interest in golden eagles. My passion for golden eagles began when I was a student at Vermilion College up in Ely, Minnesota. And my roommate happened to be the legendary John Hockema. Now, John Hockema and I were roommates, and we had an amazing professor at Winona State, at Vermilion College. His name was Bill Teft. Bill Teft took us down to Hawk Ridge, and we fell in love with Hawk Ridge. In fact, I spent as many weekends as I could down there hanging out, particularly trying to absorb as much as I could from this man, Frank Nicoletti, who's just an amazing hawk watcher, hawk counter, amazing eyes. Everything he does there at the Ridge is so very valuable. So it was great to hang out with Frank Nicoletti and learn a lot. I really enjoyed just watching the people scanning the skies, looking for birds, enjoying something that they enjoy doing. It was fun to be able to see the naturalists be bringing in the raptors, getting a chance to see them in hand, study them and learn about them, and then getting an opportunity for them to be placed in the hands of the visitors that were there, including the youngsters that will definitely be inspired by that for the rest of their lives. Even the adults get quite a thrill when given the opportunity to release a bird of prey like this back into the wild. Now, while at Hawk Ridge, that's where I really fell in love with watching golden eagles migrating by, especially on those mid to late November days when there was hardly anybody else left up there. But the golden eagles were coming by, and that was the best time of the season to be up there watching for those birds. Well, after graduating from Vermilion College, I got a good job working for the Minnesota DNR in southeast Minnesota. So I moved down to Winona, where my then girlfriend, now wife, was going to Winona State University, and got a job there and was working for non-game wildlife in southeast Minnesota. Having a great time. Well, then fall arrived, and I started thinking about golden eagles, and it was such a long drive up to the Ridge that I was like kind of going through a little bit of a withdrawal. And I was like, what am I going to do? I want to see some golden eagles. I really want to see some golden eagles, but I don't have enough time to drive all the way up to the Ridge. Well, I'd heard there were a couple of places in southeast Minnesota and western Wisconsin where bird watchers have been going literally for decades and reliably seeing golden eagles. Some of those areas were near Whitewater State Park and the Whitewater Management Area and down near Money Creek in Houston County. So I decided to head out there and look for golden eagles on my own. And sure enough, I found golden eagles there. But as I looked at the habitat around me, part of the driftless area, I was like, well, there's a lot up and down the river. There's a lot of habitat and just like this. So why are there not golden eagles in other locations? Why are they only showing up in these same places? So I started looking around and I started finding more and more birds. Then I started to doubt myself a little bit because, you know, those young bald eagles do look a lot like golden eagles. Can be a little tricky to identify at first. So I thought, well, you know what? I better go back to my trusty old bird. Sat down, poured through my old Peterson bird guide, and in the back, in the map, this is what it showed me. Yeah, there wasn't supposed to be that many golden eagles in this area. So I really started to doubt myself, but I was like, no, you know what, I really do think that I am seeing golden eagles. So I started marking down where I was seeing golden eagles, and as you can see in this particular area here, this would be southeast Minnesota, right down on the Iowa border there, bordering Wisconsin, and on the northeast side there would be up towards La Crescent there. This is kind of where the tundra swans are hanging out at this time of the year right now. Well, anyway, I saw where the stars are. Those were places where I've seen golden eagles before. Well, there was no way that I could be in all of those places at one time. And so maybe I was double counting birds by the time that I drove from one valley to another. Maybe it was just the same birds. So I needed to get people out on the same day to look for the golden eagles in those areas. And so I some survey routes and wanted to inquire and recruit some people, some friends of mine that I knew how to identify golden eagles versus bald eagles. I asked them if we'd be willing to go out on a day, and we decided it would be the third Saturday in January. That was back in 2005, and the survey is still going on to this day. Now, before a participant is able to have a survey route to themselves, it is required to go through a survey training of a couple of hours where we go through some fairly detailed identification tips to make sure that everybody is ready to be able to identify on that survey day, because we want to be able to have as accurate of data as we can. So I gathered up some of my friends. There's Bill once again. There's Steve Schoen. Gathered up a lot of my friends to get out there and start looking for those golden eagles. We got out there on those beautiful winter days, always that third Saturday in January. Most years we had pretty good weather. We had a couple of years here that I'll talk about later where the weather wasn't all that great, but we are flexible in the date of the survey by a day or two. But we've really only had to change that one time. That was last year due to weather. And we went out there and we started looking for some golden eagles. Now, these are golden eagles right here. There's two golden eagles soaring in the sky. Well, here are the numbers then for the Golden Eagle survey. This year's survey on January 25th, 2020, over 200 citizen science observers were out on that day. Over 71 different routes were surveyed. We covered 3 states, parts of Minnesota, southeast Minnesota, western Wisconsin, and northeast Iowa. Over 40 different counties were surveyed. Over 450 hours were spent surveying on survey day, and over 5,801 miles were driven on the survey day by our citizen scientist observers. Thank you so much to our observers. Many of them are MOU members, so thank you for those that are listening in today. I appreciate your support. Really appreciate those surveyors that come back year after year. It is really helpful to have the same people doing the same survey routes year after year. It really helps to validate our data much better in the long run. Well, let's look at the numbers here just a little bit. You can see that the numbers are going up. For a couple of years, you see 17 and 18 where the numbers were down. But remember, we had some years where there was some fog, and so those were kind of washout days. But there you can see averaging in the 120 to 140 range there for golden eagles over the last several years. Now, as I pointed out before, please note that the numbers are going up, but that has more to do not with the population is going up. It's just the observers that come back year after year doing the same areas are better finding the birds, because these birds are very difficult to find otherwise. These birds are creatures of habit. They use the same roost trees day after day. But when they're in those roost trees, they can really blend in. You could drive right by them thinking you are looking at a clump of leaves. In fact, I've looked at a lot of clump of leaves that then did move. They were golden eagles. So don't overlook those clumps of leaves. They may be golden eagles because they do really blend in with the landscape. And so once the surveyors are going back to those same areas year after year, and because the golden eagles use the same trees year after year, if they're not by there in their first pass, if they come back later in the day, they have a pretty good chance of catching those golden eagles in those particular survey areas. Here is a graph showing the number of golden eagles there in blue, and then in the red is the adult versus the green percentage-wise in juveniles. And so you can see that on average, about 60% or more tend to be adults versus juveniles in the birds that are being reported. Because we're out there looking at eagles, and we want to count everything that we're looking at, because right after the Christmas bird count, we're all anxious to do some more bird counting on that third Saturday in January, and so we're out counting everything else as well. And so here you can see the bald eagle numbers over the years from 2010 to 2016. Here are some more recent numbers here from 2020, 1,403, which is just an absolutely amazing number when you think about it, because our survey routes that we're looking for golden eagles in are not what you would typically think for bald eagles. Because remember, bald eagles like the aquatic environments, but they also live in our bluff country as well. The golden eagles, on the other hand, are not found near the water. In the 25 years now that I've been watching and studying golden eagles, only on one occasion have I seen a golden eagle within 30 feet of the Mississippi River. I work right next to the Mississippi River. I live right next to the Mississippi River. I spend a lot of time there. Golden eagles just aren't in that habitat. They're out in the forested valleys, feeding on rabbits, squirrels, and wild turkeys. So for us to be able to see 1,403 bald eagles on the survey day in an area basically going from about Hastings, Stillwater area down to Dubuque, Iowa, straddling both sides of the Mississippi River in the bluff country, that is pretty amazing numbers. There was a time when we didn't have that many bald eagles left in the entire lower 48 states. So quite an amazing comeback for the bald eagle. As I mentioned before, we're counting other birds as well. So here's the last few years here, numbers of red-tailed hawks. Here we have the numbers of kestrels over the years as well. Now we are also counting other birds while we are out there as well. In fact, many of you, we heard over the years here from Chet Myers and the folks with the Red-headed Woodpecker Project. This year, we recorded 19 different red-headed woodpeckers during the survey, along with lots of other birds, including snow buntings and trumpeter swans and everything else in between. We're out there counting. We enjoy doing that. If you want to learn more about the other things that we saw on the survey, please check out our website, nationaleaglecenter.org, to learn more about the survey results. Another thing that I'd like to point out that I'm actually quite proud of, maybe you would think as a researcher, scientist, you're like, what, unidentified? You couldn't identify that many birds? Well, there are times in bluff country where the birds slip behind the bluff, never to come back up again, invisible again. And so in our survey training that we do, I really encourage people to not make a guess as to what the bird was, only until they are definitely sure they've crossed off all the I's and T's, dotted all the T's and I's, and whatever that is. They've done all the things they needed to do to make sure that what we were seeing was, in fact, a bald eagle or a golden eagle. And if you didn't know, couldn't figure it out, put it down as identified. And so there are those numbers. But we did see good numbers of golden eagles over the years. Those numbers started attracting the attention of some folks. In particular, this guy right here, Mark Martell. Many of you may know from his work with raptors over the years, including his work with ospreys and their migration here in Minnesota and Wisconsin area. He was having a chat with Carol Henderson from the Minnesota DNR, and also Bud Tordoff and Rich Baker from the Minnesota DNR. And they were talking about the golden eagles that we were seeing, and they wanted to come down and have me show them some. And we did, and we went out there, and sure enough, we found some golden eagles, many more than most people had thought. Because in the past, most people thought these golden eagles were further to the west, and only occasionally did they end up here in Minnesota or Wisconsin. But because of the numbers that we were finding, we all decided that we should get together and form a partnership to study this very little known population of golden eagles. So we formed a partnership with the National Eagle Center along with Audubon, Minnesota, where Mark Martell was employed, and along with great help with the Non-Game Wildlife Program, with Carol Henderson's assistance, and also Wisconsin DNR helped us in the field, and also United States Fish and Wildlife Service, Winona District, also helped us in the field. We purchased some transmitters through the help of Carol Henderson. Carol Henderson, as you know, is just a mainstay of this paper session event, but also of non-game wildlife assistance here in the state of Minnesota. And once again, he came to the bat and got some money for us to be able to get some transmitters that we could use for this project. Now you can see the transmitter there laid out next to a $100 bill to kind of give you an idea of size. Next to it, you'll see a leg band that we would put on the bird. Because when the transmitter falls off at some point, because the transmitter is attached with Teflon ribbon, as you'll see in the next slide, that eventually will fall off and degrade. But if that bird is ever found again, thankfully that band will be there. We'll learn a little bit more about how long that bird lived. And then you'll see the battery that's next to it. Now that battery doesn't run the battery in the transmitter. That D battery is there. Imagine lifting that battery up. That's the weight of that transmitter. So not very heavy. Now on the top of that transmitter, you'll see a little solar panel that recharges an internal battery. And on average, the company says that we'll get about 4 to 6 years worth of data out of those. We average about 4 years on the birds that we utilize for the project. But once again, thank you to Carol Henderson for his work. So there again, there's the one of the birds that has that transmitter on the back. Now here you can see it really stands out at this point, but this transmitter was just put on. And so as that bird preens, that'll work its way down to the system, and then it actually becomes very hard to see that. In fact, only a little antenna there on the back left corner there sticks up, and sometimes that's the only thing that we were able to see. When we knew exactly where these golden eagles were, we went looking for them. We had to look really hard just to see the antenna. So we decided a couple of different methods to try to lure these golden eagles in so that we could put these transmitters on. And so some of them included putting out dead deer. We did get some birds coming in 2 deer carcasses. We also had a young student from a local school raise black Spanish turkeys from egg to this stage right here. They do look a lot like a wild turkey, and because golden eagles go after them, we decided that might be a good bird to lure those golden eagles in. And so we did utilize them in our trapping efforts as well. This is one of the birds that was captured up at Hawk Ridge by Frank Nicoletti and crew. And so grateful to them for a bird that we named Jack. Jack is in honor of Jack Huffsler from a Hawk Ridge origination fame. Here you can see the bird with the transmitter on it. Here we go before release. One of the first birds, though, that we released with the transmitter was a bird that was unfortunately caught in a leg hold trap and had 2 gaping wounds on it. It was brought here to the National Eagle Center by the Wisconsin DNR. We then immediately transported it to the Raptor Center, world-renowned, right in their backyard for taking care of raptors. And they did amazing work. They were able to do some skin grafts, some feather follicle grafts, and then a transmitter was able to be attached here. You can see by Dr. Julia Ponder and Mark Martell there working there together. And then we were able to release that bird right here, and thankfully Mark gave me the honor of being able to release that first bird named Whitey, due to the whitish gold coloration on the back of his feathers. This was a bird that I believe I had been watching for quite some time in the wild. And there they go. Mark looks a little bit happier than my frowning face, but still exciting to let the bird go with the transmitter. So then the big question was, okay, we've released these birds. Where are these birds going? I always previously thought that these birds were coming from somewhere out west, where the golden eagle is more common, from about the Missouri River in the Dakotas, and then all the way west towards the Pacific Ocean, up into Canada and Alaska, and then also down into Mexico. In fact, the golden eagle is found down into the northern half of Mexico. In fact, the golden eagle is the bird that's featured on the Mexican coat of arms. But the birds that are coming to Minnesota for the winter, That is not where they are going. We are learning they're going somewhere else. We're learning that these birds are going north into northern parts of Canada. In fact, into the areas of below the Arctic Circle, in some cases, in Nunavut, in the Northwest Territories, near the Great Slave Lake. This is a bird that we released near Wapaka, Wisconsin. And what's interesting about this bird is that we tracked her, I think it was over 2,300 some miles there to her nesting site up in Nunavut. And for 3 of the years, maybe it was 4, she arrived back at her nesting site up in Nunavut at the same nesting site on the exact same day, at least 3 years in a row. Can you imagine that? That's pretty amazing reliability. I mean, the airlines, they could learn something from that. Here you can see all the red octagons. Those are areas where our golden eagles that we've released from this area with satellite transmitters have then went to the breeding areas for the summer. So as I started the program here today, I talked about how the golden eagles were in the driftless area because that is where we were studying them. And that's kind of where the first couple of birds that we released were released from. Then here along comes Jack. That's that bird that came from Hawk Ridge. Frank and crew captured up there for us. And here is Mark Martel getting ready to release it with some donors there from Hawk Ridge. Well, after leaving Hawk Ridge, he flew down through Wisconsin, then went down to near Dubuque, Iowa. Spent about a week near Dubuque, Iowa, and I was like, sure, yep, that's driftless area. That's where that bird's going to overwinter. He was just fueling up because then he continued the rest of his journey all the way down into southern Missouri in northern Arkansas, where we tracked him for several years in a row. Then I believe it was in 2014, his transmitter stopped sending signals, but this past March, Mark Martel got a band award, a band number that had been returned, and remember I said I was just going to keep going, band returned, and somebody near Saskatoon, Canada, 15 miles northeast, had found this bird dead in the woods, and on it was this leg band, and so we know that that bird did live several years after we stopped tracking the bird. Now, the folks up at a couple years ago, Brian Dirks up at Camp Ripley, who was studying wolves, had golden eagles coming into the trail cameras. We had an extra transmitter at the time, and we donated that to them, and they were able to release that with a bird, with a transmitter. And they have now since, along with the help with William Faber from Central Lakes College, they've released several more golden eagles with satellite transmitters. So really thankful for them and the work that they are doing for this population of golden eagles. Mark and I and Brian Dirks and I, we're all part of a Eastern Golden Eagle working group where we're trying to determine the population in the Eastern United States of the golden eagles. All the marks there on the maps are tracking of different golden eagles that have been placed in the Eastern United States. We're working on a comprehensive plan, a management plan for golden eagles. And right now, the estimate is that in the Eastern United States, there are approximately 5,000 golden eagles that overwinter in the Eastern United States. Now, the tracking that has been done on golden eagles here in Minnesota and other eastern states has shown that this overlooked wintering population spends the breeding season in the vast reaches of northern Canada. This population has only recently been studied, and although we are gaining information, there is vast amounts of information to be learned and understood about the wintering area and breeding area of this species. Climate change is something that we're concerned about. Climate change will most likely be detrimental to this population of golden eagles. Known food sources on the breeding grounds include Arctic ground squirrels, ptarmigan, various waterfowl species, and even caribou calves. Shifts in timing of egg laying of prey species or the birthing time and movements of caribou could mean food shortages during critical growth periods for young eaglets. According to research being done in Alaska, some scientists believe that climate change may result in heavier snowfall in some regions, could then change migration patterns and cause some caribou to give birth to calves outside the more protected calving areas. Warming climate is also expected to increase parasites that can affect behavior, condition, and productivity of caribou. Warmer weather might also mean more insect activity, which could result in more discomfort for golden eagles, caribou, and other wildlife, meaning less feeding time. Warmer weather will also bring more fire to the region, which will greatly affect older growth forests that support abundant lichen populations that caribou rely on as a major winter food source. One of the habitats that golden eagles rely on in our area is the goat prairie habitat. I think golden eagles utilize the goat prairie habitat for a couple of reasons. One is the lift that's provided there. So one is orographic lift. When the wind hits an object, it creates an updraft of air. Golden eagles will ride on that. Also thermal lift. The different textures that are there on that landscape provide different heating. That provides thermal lift. Goat prairies, by the way, are called goat prairies because when the settlers first arrived here, the cattle would graze the lower hillsides, but the goats were the only ones who could go on those very steep hillsides. So golden eagles, as I mentioned before, use that for lift, but more importantly, use that for prey acquisition. You can imagine golden eagles sailing across the backside of that bluff undetected. A wild turkey, for example, could be out in the open. That golden eagle could come down and catch it if it was in the open. But unfortunately, most of our goat prairies in our habitat now today do look a lot more like this. We are stopping fire in the landscape. Stopping fire in the landscape has allowed red cedars and other woody plants to invade those prairie areas and take those areas over. As you can imagine now, a turkey would have a much better chance of surviving an escape, being able to escape from a golden eagle with all of that cover. Thankfully, work is being done on goat prairies. This one has been much more habitat improved. They're doing cutting, fires, and even goats. Goats are also coming back. In fact, Jake Langsley of Faribault, Minnesota operates something called Goat Dispatch, where goat management has been surging in popularity, where the goats are back on the hillsides and they're out there clearing vegetation like buckthorn and other invasives. Now, goat management has surged in popularity, but proof that it works in the long term is lacking. Now, Tiffany Wolf from the University of Minnesota School of Veterinary Population Medicine is currently working on a research project titled Understanding the Benefits and Limitations of Using Goats for Invasive Plant Control. The project will evaluate the lasting benefits of goat defoliation of buckthorn management and determine if feeding poses harm to other native plant in the ecosystem. I look forward to hearing her, and maybe this will be another MOU presentation. Her data is out in 2022. So many different species of wildflowers and grasses rely on that goat prairie habitat. In fact, less than 0.1% of our original prairies today. In the driftless area, much of the remaining prairies are hill prairies, or the bluff prairies as we talked about before. And well over 200 species of native grasses and wildflowers utilize this habitat. Lots of different critters utilize that goat prairie habitat. The golden eagle in the wintertime, but all of these critters utilize it the rest of the year. So when we think about golden eagles utilizing that habitat, they're utilizing winter habitat, and we need to learn more about that winter habitat. Just as we're always concerned about our neotropical migrants and the habitat that they rely on down in Central and South America, we're concerned about that habitat, as we should be, because we're sharing that habitat with our birds. Well, we're also sharing that habitat with the golden eagles that come here out of northern Canada. But golden eagles are definitely utilizing the river valley, and excited more about the golden eagle with you. One last couple things here before we end here. I apologize, I'm about over on time. I do want to share a couple of things. Didn't get to do a lot of ID stuff here today. I will tell you though, there was one photo that was in there that I talked about today that wasn't, I was talking about golden eagles, but the photo was actually a juvenile bald eagle. If you can send me an email at golden@nationaleaglecenter.org and let me know which photo that was. If you're one of the first ones to do that, I've got a couple passes to the National Eagle Center for you. But I will point out this area here. See where the money is? That is where the golden eagles like to perch. So when you're coming down to driftless area here, looking for golden eagles, check out those areas. But as we talked about before, as the folks Brian Dirks and William Faber are finding out, there are golden eagles out across Minnesota. So keep your eyes out for golden eagles across Minnesota. I encourage you to help with the survey. It's always the third Saturday in January. If you have questions, I think we're out of time, but I will be available on the 5th here when we all get together for a Zoom call. So if you have more questions about the Golden Eagle Project, I would be glad to answer those. If you have questions, please feel free to give me a call or send me an email. A huge thank you to all of those that I have not mentioned so far. I really do appreciate Mark and Carol, and I got to keep going. I'll forget somebody. But all the rest that are on here as well, don't forget, you are so much appreciated, so much for your help over the years on this Golden Eagle project. Thank you for not falling asleep. I hope I wasn't too much of a bore. I really appreciate you bearing with me. I know that you had so many eider choices today. There is that look. Now some of you are getting owly. But thank you for taking the time to listen today. And I hope that I'll see you at the National Eagle Center in Wabasha, Minnesota.